Welcome to Different Gravy, not just another Sheffield Wednesday podcast. I'm one of the hosts, Richard Miller, and my co-host, unlike Sheffield Wednesday, still awaiting the decision of his independent panel to decide whether or not his views are too hot to take, or in their words, muy caliente. His name is Luke Gledall. He's here with more hot takes. He's going to keep going until the decision is made. How are you doing, Luke?
Good. I'm very good. Waiting for that independent panel to just put a real dampener on my hot takes.
On your hot takes and your hot cakes.
Yes, those two. I'm very good. How are you, Rich? How are things?
I'm okay. We've obviously got a bit of news, a fairly sizable bit of news that's come in, and I think from that perspective, relieved we've got to that point. But maybe we should motor along and talk about that as quickly as possible. But other than that, I'm well. The weather's fairly good at the moment here in the UK, so that puts you in a bit of a better mood, a finer fettle of a morning. So how are things in Calgs?
It's been it's pretty scorching here as well. We've had a couple of 30-degree days here as well this week, so it's been a little uncomfortable. I'm going to say, sleeping with the AC on and fans running, and worried about the livelihood of my cat Leonard, all that type of fun stuff.
So Leonard doesn't love the heat.
He does not. He's been having a good old pant, which isn't a good old thing at all. It's pretty worrying. But doing all those hood things like sleeping with a frozen water bottle and all those fun things.
Yep. Every little helps, really, isn't it? You got to just seek out these solutions. Okay, well, shall we? I'll await your protestations, but I think we should move along to
breaking hoo-hoos.
Breaking hoo-hoos. Do you want to do the slightly fun one or the very unfun one first?
Let's do unfun. Let's get the unfun out of the way.
Just eat the frog.
Different gravy. Unfun first.
Carpe the frog. Seize that DM. Okay. Well, so finally we've received news in a sort of roundabout way. So the first thing I saw was actually the club's statement in response to the decision of the panel. Was that the same experience for you?
Yes, that is essentially, yeah. I think they were the ones to kind of essentially go live with that news of what was happening as a club statement. Yes.
But effectively, we've not been found to be sort of flouting the rules. I think that was something that they sort of, or acting in bad faith. But we will have a 12-point deduction imposed next season, and could you sort of make full sense of what they were passing out in terms of what we were actually being sort of picked up on and what things we hadn't been? It's more to do with the timing of it appearing in our books. Do you think that's the way it reads to me?
I think so.
So does that mean that Derby are kind of free and clear?
Well, I think that's genuinely a different issue completely, right? I mean, the whole Derby thing seems to be a different kettle of fish, pretty much.
I thought the main thrust was that we were both being charged with sort of overinflating the price of the stadium as we sold it to ourselves. But what complicated things for us was we included it in last year's accounts when it seems like the actual transaction happened this financial year. So in terms of us getting charged for breaking the rules, it's not clear at this point, I don't think, what we've actually been, which bits we've been charged with. Because as I say, the club sort of say we were cleared of breaching our duty of utmost good faith to the EFL by deliberately concealing information. So maybe the moving around, maybe the waggling around of years is something that's been dismissed. So presumably we will challenge this.
You'd imagine so. I mean, the thing I kind of want to say is, I mean, we are relieved because there is a sense of finality of having a decision about this. The finality hasn't happened, though. The conclusion hasn't come because it's more stuff for the courtrooms. potentially from Wednesday, potentially from other clubs in the league, including, I think there's a news article, there's a report about how Charlton are considering legal action, because again, it's the self-interest of this, and it obviously would keep them afloat in the Championship for another year, though Charlton are seemingly going through a pretty bad time themselves right now. So I don't know, you can have multiple things on the go, but maybe not their biggest kind of priority, to be a little harsh about things. So, I kind of feel not to kind of linger too much into spoilers. But you know the ending for No Country for Old Men, which is Tommy Lee Jones kind of looking out the windows, talking about how he had a dream, and it's basically just like more shit will happen in the future. Basically, it kind of feels like that. It's an ending of the film of Sheffield Wednesday, No Country for old stadiums being sold for FFP. And but the trouble is still on the horizon. There's still potential trouble at mill, as they put it. Not in the film, just how people put it in general. There's trouble at mill. As I said previously, it is all to play for on the luscious green grass of the courtroom.
But I think in terms of officially, I think what it does mean, even though this decision, we'll probably challenge the decision, other clubs may put forward a challenge. I think Charlton don't really particularly have a leg to stand on, because it's a pretty sort of hard rule to beat that the season officially finishes on Friday. All of the promotions and relegations and everything are signed off by the teams in the league, and that season is kind of put to bed. So I think that's probably, in part, that's probably why the decision was made to push things to next year in terms of the points penalty. But I think it means that there's just no chance for those bits and pieces of hearings to be heard and decided on before Friday, effectively. So we can push back and have our conversation. Charlton might get some money thrown at them potentially, but they're not going to be saved, I don't think. Their fate, which they played a big part towards landing themselves in. I don't think they're going to get their 11th hour, escape route. So as we sort of said, I presume we will challenge it. But if this stands, this decision, effectively this season, if we started with -12, we would have ended up on 44 points and been bottom of the table. So how does that impact on your sort of feelings? And I think we're sort of fairly, it's been a fairly maudlin end to the season for Sheffield Wednesday, so it's hard to look forward to next season. We need a bit of time for enthusiasm tanks to revamp. We probably need a few more signings and things like that to feel like there's a reason to hope again and expect better next season. But we've sort of come to the conclusion in our talking about the last game of the season and looking ahead to our sort of review of the season, sort of come to the conclusion that we're probably expecting a fairly similar kind of set of results next year to this year, unless something major happens. Do you have much faith that this squad, without many changes, can pick up those extra 12 points to save themselves?
Well, at this stage, no, because obviously, as we said, the tank has been running on empty in terms of a lot of people's enthusiasm for football, but also the Sheffield Wednesday squad and how many people are there in that effect. So definitely no.
I guess
interestingly...
Sorry, just to kind of use this season for comparison, 2 extra wins would put us on level points with Huddersfield and Luton and relatively safe. It's whether we could have got those 2 extra wins knowing our situation effectively. But yeah, sorry, I didn't want to cut you off.
But I guess there's the interesting thing. So like a lot of people have said, like the fact that we have said, and I think other people have definitely said this, definitely other Wednesday fans on podcasts, on message boards, Twitter, wherever you're listening to people natter about Wednesday. At these points, it's all good places. Effectively, this team didn't look like they were in kind of threat of any kind of points deduction.
No.
They didn't look threatened. There was no reaction from them. So I don't know. You can look at that from 2 perspectives. You can either be like, we're really screwed next season, or they're actually now going to actually understand that there's something on them. That, I've seen some people mention like a siege mentality. That's going to be an interesting situation. Definitely, Monk now has a bigger task on his hand to get characters into, because I don't think we have many characters who can, rile and kind of big up. Like, I mean, in effect, like, this is an interesting question to look at now. Like, we have definitely lacked someone who has been captain material.
Yes.
Like, definitely now looking at this, who are we going to look and pick at? Was it Tom Lees? Is Tom Lees technically the club captain?
He still is, yeah.
He still is. And with the I said the greatest respects, but it's kind of a bit like when you say to someone, I don't mean to sound like a dickhead, however, I'm going to say something that makes me sound like a dickhead. So I've said something that says, with the greatest respect, when I don't think there is any respect left for kind of Tom Lees. He looks broken. He looks like a child's toy that's been broken. Maybe Pixar could do a film about him and kind of romanticize him as one of a cast of something of Toy Story. But Tom Woody Lees is looking pretty shot, and is not the person who I really want to look towards. Once more into the breach. Giving a rousing speech to get the lads into battle, so to speak. So
yeah, absolutely.
So there's an interesting now dynamic, which just to kind of not quite segue, but we will come to the fun news that we have made a signing, which is a young signing, but we also could probably do with, I think for a long time, I think we've looked at, we could do with a very commanding centre-back who would be a captain, or a commanding player in the middle of the park who could be a voice. And I think maybe if we're looking at, if we can't do the quite level of surgery that we really would ideally want to do, which is almost to the point of just ripping up the whole squad and starting again, then we need someone to come in and provide this kind of unworldly alchemy, really, because we've got a lot of players that are really cheap, nasty metal that we want to turn into platinum, basically. We've got a lot of copper we want to turn into platinum.
It's it's tricky, isn't it? Because the brief in terms of bringing players in, by and large, will have been younger, fitter, stronger, quicker, all the rest of those things. But
happier, more productive, like a bird in a cage and antibiotics.
Fitter, happier, more productive. Yeah, exactly. But that doesn't necessarily mean you come with that personality, does it? And I also think we've tried to co-opt other people's captains pretty unsuccessfully at times. I think Darren Pearce was a bit of that. I think Martin Taylor was a bit.
Martin Taylor, yeah.
I mean, you could also argue sort of Michael Morrison. I mean, maybe it was just ahead of his time because he's carved out a fairly good, much as he was a bit of a laughable figure here, he's carved out a fairly good career for himself as that kind of leader, hard man sort of centre-back. It really, really didn't work out for him at Wednesday, but he's had several long stints at decent championship clubs doing that job. So
including Birmingham, who I feel that there's the kind of link with Monk there, and Monk kind of leading Birmingham within that those kind of problems as well.
Yeah. So that it is tricky because that doesn't necessarily happen, but you can get lucky. You can get young and captain material. I think Glenn Whelan, to an extent, was almost a kind of born captain. He seemed to be an organizer and a talker from his 20s onwards. He was, he's always the captain of youth teams and things. So it can happen. It's just rarer, and it's how much respect do you get within a squad where we've seen that the kind of senior pros are very, very happy just unloading on the young players when things go wrong, whether it's the young player's fault or not. So it does make the summer it was already a tricky tightrope, but it's pretty dicey now. I suppose as far as we know, there's not financial sanctions that come along with this points deduction. So it's not like we're going to take 12 points and during an embargo, unless that comes later. But potentially, if we've got a freer sort of hand, the summer, that would help.
But I mean, even under an embargo, I think we still have like leeways to produce and perform and to buy players. And I mean, that happened to Birmingham before, right? And then if we're led to believe, which again, this was, I think even you've held me to this, like I've kind of maybe quoted something I've read in the press as being gospel. Was it something like getting players on the wage of like 11 grand or 11,500, which is seemed to be like the standard for actually how much kind of players have roughly played in the championship.
But that's where the job of but the thing is, so we've got a wage that maybe people know what the ceiling is. So agents will know what the ceiling is, and all the clubs will know that we're held to that total, and we're asking people to join a club that starts with -12. We'll be the favourites for relegation, or certainly there or thereabouts. So we're asking players to sort of take that risk on us. And if we're competing with other teams for those players, they know that there's financial territory that we just can't follow them into either. So I think the fact that we could sling an extra, grand or £500 per week to someone's way could be vital in terms of if these are really good players and prospects that people are interested in.
But if we had no restrictions, how attractive would we be? I think it's known that we're in transition. I think it's known that even current existing players are being offered lesser terms. That seems to be the musings I've heard in many a place. And we're obviously now going to be playing with a -12 handicap.
Yeah.
Not in a handicap in the sense of golf sense.
No.
Handicap is it's actually genuinely going to cripple us.
And this is whilst the commission is watching. This is what you need to understand about Luke. He's pulling tremendous punditry out, risky, whilst the commission is watching over his every word. No, you're right. I like the idea that we're so good that we have to give everyone a 12-point head start. That's the way you could spin it. If you're in like North Korea or something like that, that would be. The championship has decided prospects are so good at Hillsborough that to make it fair for the other teams, we have to take 12 points from them. Oh dear. I think before we know more, my hope is that we will end up with a points deduction that is smaller than the one that we have on challenging it.
I mean, I guess actually there's one thing I want to kind of ask you, Rich, and one kind of mentality I'm on right now, which is like I'm trying to, we do this and we try and be as positive as we can Sheffield Wednesday, which is sometimes kind of very much stretching the imagination and potentially going into being fraudulent and disingenuous. But I really think that applied to next season, I think there's some people who are like, we should take it on the chin, and basically we're just delaying the inevitable. I think it's really satisfying in a really sad and morbid way that it hasn't been this season, because it would genuinely just be the worst season, I think, in Sheffield Wednesday's history in a long time if this had happened, because it's just been such an uninspiring amount of dreck and disappointment on the pitch.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say. Right. Sorry, I'm just looking. I wondered whether the EFL had made their own statement on it, and they have. So we've been charged the 12 points under the profit and sustainability rules for the 3 seasons ending the last sort of financial period, so 2017-2018. And basically they found that the club guilty on the fact that the club should not have included the profits from the sale of Hillsborough Stadium in the club's financial statements for that year, which I think means that, well, presumably we're all right to include them this year then. And we made a profit this year or thereabouts. We don't know what this year's statement looks like, but it's due at some point soon, I think. Potentially that means that we've kind of got away with the sale of the ground element, but it is just the fact it was reported in the wrong financial year. Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you. The fact it's not affected this year and we get to start in the championship is a big boon to us. I also think we've seen clubs overcome, particularly points deductions at the start of the season. We've seen clubs overcome that before. It's not necessarily a death knell, because you can start the season in that siege mentality. And actually, within a handful of games, you have to be in the sort of form that would put you in the promotion picture if you weren't getting relegated, but you can easily be in a position where actually you've kind of eaten up that ground and you're on a fairly similar footing with most of the rest of the league. It can happen. It's just a big if, isn't it? But genuinely, it's 4 wins, but it would be 4 wins to be starting from nothing, which it's how do you deal with the mentality that sort of brings in? Because it will be disappointing looking at the league table and having nothing to show for the fact that you've won 4 games. But yeah, a good run, a good streak. It's not unheard of for teams to win sort of 4 or 5 out of the first 6 games and not lose the other 2. And in which case, there'd be the disappointment that we're in promotion form, but we're bottom of the table. But we will have also eaten up the ground that we had to make up in a very short order. So do we want to kind of move along on that aspect? Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, that sounds a good way to conclude. Yeah.
So there's a couple of bits of news in addition to that, which were brighter, as we've both sort of touched on. We signed Fizeo Deli Bashiru on an undisclosed fee. First permanent signing under Gary Monk. A Man City youngster, 19 years old. He seems like a confident young man from what I've seen so far, and comes with a fairly good reputation.
I think so. I think it's definitely a. We said this before. It's a promising signing. It's a step in the right direction. I don't know if it's going to be a wholesale kind of change of our transfer policy, but it feels refreshing. It feels different. The funny thing is, obviously, it's a player we've been linked with for a few weeks now, so it's kind of been on the radar, and it's something we've talked about before.
Yeah.
We talked about it, was it last week or the week before? It's felt a small while, which sometimes some of these rumours can do. The interesting thing I kind of find about that is, from this perspective, is how, it's interesting that, you have these, in this world of, Twitter and transfer rumours and more kind of internet avenues for conjecture and reporting on the game, is that it's something that's reported, and then the fact of getting over the line kind of feels a bit of relief, because it's something you hear about and then you think, well, why isn't it not done now? Oh, maybe it's just agent talk, maybe he's going somewhere else. Why is it so long and protracted? Shouldn't this be done tomorrow? I think sometimes gives that kind of mentality.
Yes.
So I'm really feeling a huge relief of the fact that this one's kind of over the line and that it's kind of done and that we've managed to kind of conclude a deal. That's kind of like a weird kind of side of things. There's a potential of, is he going to be... He could potentially be a very good player. He could absolutely tank. It could be somewhere in the middle. The only thing I'm kind of unsure about is, I think sometimes we talked previously about the problem at Sheffield Wednesday being it may not be the best kind of grounds and environment for youngsters to develop. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's that feeling of expectation. Maybe we want players to come in and hit the ground running. Maybe also there's a difficulty that seen as kind of in previous regimes. This regime and in previous regimes, we haven't been seen as a very good kind of footballing side, not somewhere where kind of academies want to send their players on loan to, which it seems like in this environment, it's a lot more kind of conjecture around players coming in. I mean, this is different because this is a player that's been released from academy. Sounds like he's got the right attitude, but I really hope in that aspect that he is one for the future and one to develop, and I hope it's a quicker transition from him to first team. But I hope that we give him time to develop.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure. Yeah, I think we've got at least 2 very good players in midfield, haven't we? In Luongo and Bannon. So as long as they stay around, there's room for a sort of third wheel to make a place their own if we continue with the similar sort of system. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. He sort of talked about bringing sort of a bit of pace and a bit of power to things. So on paper, looks like the sort of signing we need. He is very young. 19's very young, but highly thought of in the game. Offered a contract to stay at Man City as well, but wants to get out and play football. So I think from what we can see, all pretty good signings, all pretty good sort of signs, about this signing. Other than that, we don't really know very much, do we? There's not, miles and miles of video. There's not a teaser video on YouTube to increase our expectations through the roof.
Unfortunately, I'm disappointed to report that even though fans of different gravy will know that Rich and I have plenty of links with the dark web, we haven't managed to find any shadowy archives of all of the PL2 games that he's played last season, all 14 of them, scoring 1 goal, to let you know if he's much cop.
Did you pick up? This is one little thing before we kind of move on to the last piece of news. There was there was some speculation, and maybe it did pop up and then get taken down again. But there was a video on at Chansiri's, or there was a kind of screenshot of a video on at Chansiri's YouTube feed welcoming him to the club, and on inspecting his YouTube feed, I saw the teaser video he did for Joey Pelupessy, and it's about 90 seconds long, and it kind of goes like, he can pass, and shows some passing. He scored this one good goal, and shows a volley or a shot from distance, and then at the end it just kind of goes, sorry, I couldn't find any other good clips of it.
Oh, thank you, I think it's not the Joey Pelupessy teaser we want, but it is the Joey Pelupessy teaser video we deserve, isn't it, really?
I thought you'd enjoy that. Pelupessy, who, we've got him for another year, so that's good.
Yeah, we certainly do.
Yeah. So the other bit of news, the second half of this episode, or the second chunk of this episode, is mine and Luke's review of the season. We've gone through everybody that's played a minute of first team league football for Sheffield Wednesday this season, and given them all a school style grade, somewhere between A and E. We also talked towards the end of that about our pick for player of the season, but the club's official decision on that has been announced, and the fans have voted for Dominic Iorfa.
He's a player who has had very good spells this season. He's also had one or two not so great moments, but largely a hell of a lot better than bad, I would say. I think he's also a player who maybe kind of sums up what kind of players, fans like about players. Or, kind of a big commanding centre-back, athletic, someone who's, and also has a bit of talent alongside that as well. Yeah. So I don't think it's the worst choice. I don't think it's the one I'd agree, I don't think it's my player of the season. Is it your player of the season, Rich?
No, maybe the player I'm most excited about watching next season. That might be fair to say, as he kind of continues to grow and grow into that role of being a centre back. But no, probably not quite my player of the season. We kind of narrowed it down. We don't want to spoil it too much. We narrowed it down to a group of players, and Iorfa was within that group of players. So there's it's certainly not out of the blue, and it's not a decision I'm sort of angry with or dislike in any way. I think it's perfectly fine, and hopefully it's a kind of shot in the arm for him, and fills, sort of gives him a confidence going into next season, because undoubtedly, unless he's one of the players that moves, he's going to be a guy that we need. He's going to be part of that building that we're doing, and we will need to build things around him and his talent. So him feeling confident, him feeling that the fans like him and are on board with him, and hopefully the feeling's mutual. I think those are all good, positive things. So yeah, hopefully he'll take it that way, and it won't be like an applied extra pressure for him going forward. So having spoken about it, we're going to motor along to our review of the season. Enjoy.
Do you remember near the beginning of the season we actually did a prediction of the table?
I do remember us doing that. Yes.
I actually blew the dust off my old Evernote for that one.
Oh, lovely.
So I said that Fulham would go up champions, didn't I? I did put Leeds for automatic for second, so that's kind of not too far off. I had West Brom at third, and obviously they went up in second. I did go for Brentford for fifth, and they came third. Hilariously, I went for Forest for sixth, which would have happened had they not capitulated massively at Stoke. I over-egged Bristol. But anyway, going back to Wednesday, I did put Wednesday down at 9. I did say that our top scorer would be Fletcher with 14. I think was it 13 before he departed us?
Might well have been. Let's look. Fletcher. Yeah, 13 league goals.
And the hilarity that I said our player of the season would be Adam Reach. Sideshow Greasy Bob.
Yes.
Didn't work out at all.
So I've got, I'm just looking now. So I had Fulham top, West Brom, Leeds, and I had Cardiff and Swansea in the top.
Really?
And Bristol City was my other team. So obviously that was a miss. Didn't think Brentford would do quite as well as they had them down at 11th. I had Luton to go down and Barnsley.
Luton were my only correct position. I did have them for 19th. Though I guess as the season is brought to you by Schrodinger,
you didn't get them in the correct position then.
Technically, I might not. Well, when we get a points deduction and Derby get a points deduction.
Oh yeah, of course, because the Wigan one, they haven't got the Wigan one off the Championship table in.
Have they not?
No, so you're right. Sorry.
Well, I had Wigan for the bottom. So
who did you get most wrong?
Who did I get most wrong? That's a good question. I guess so. If you're looking at that and looking at like how many positions out in the table, is that what you're going to look at?
Or like, did you have a team that was
I think my biggest one is Millwall. I had them to go down second from bottom, and they were 8th in the league. That's pretty substantial, I must say.
Yeah, I'm just looking. I think mostly the teams I had round the bottom did end up round the bottom. Yeah, I mean Reading were relatively safe. I had them maybe being around the bottom. But that was before they signed Lucas Schwau, turned their whole season around.
Best minutes to goal ratio.
To be honest, I think probably the team I got most wrong was Sheffield Wednesday.
Where did you predict we would be?
Had us 8.
You had us 8th, had us 9th, yeah.
So 9 positions away from where we actually finished. Or 10 actually with the Wigan swap. So
it could be even more if we get a
Yes.
Oh, that could be our biggest misstep.
I had Brentford 11th and Bristol City in 6th. So those two were kind of swapped around positions. But I'm not too unhappy with it.
Mm-hmm.
So West Brom automatics. I was hoping Leeds would miss out, but obviously that was a vain hope.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I've got my predictions for our best player and things like that. I don't know. Do you know what episode that was?
That was very early. I mean, it's probably going to be episode 2 or 3 because it was did that note back at the end of July last year.
It might have been before I was so organised to have I've got notes every episode from a certain point. Episode 3. Yeah, it must have been just before the.
Remember how enthusiastic we were and how much we were looking forward to talking about Wednesday every week and watching the football and reviewing the football and talking about the football. Remember that, Rich?
I do remember that. I just remember these young guys full of hope, vim and vigor. So how do we want to tackle this? Look at the season, Luke. How do we want to do it?
I think you came with a suggestion of looking through like all the players that have featured for Wednesday this season in a who scored, and then we're going to look back through the lens of pure hard stats. We're going to boil our teaspoon of stats and get into our veins. Is that what we're going to do?
Choose stats. Choose to look at minutes played as a means to look to previewing how the season's actually gone. Ignore WhoScored's rating and pick your own based on school grades. So Barry Bannon has played the most minutes, 3,850 minutes for that young man.
2 goals and 8 assists.
No wonder his brain is a tired thing. He also, I bet I won't be able to find it now, but somebody had put a sort of summary of his statistics up. So it was like most passes, most assists, and he was first for almost everything, including he was, I think, 4th for tackles, which I think says a lot about our team. If Barry Bannon is 4th best for tackling, we are rubbish at defending. Because Bannon is not good at it.
What do you think of the? Do you think this is a? I know he's a very is a very wee gentleman. Is Barry Bannon?
We dirty man.
Oh, we dirty man. I'd like to think about in our kind of train spotting with the Scottish contingents of the squad, Bannon, Fletcher, and the most Scottish of them all, Liam Palmer, as we talk about. The thickest brogue of them all is Liam Palmer. Liam is Scottish granny, and
where's your trousers?
Bannon said, "Fuck off, mate! I got a 1.2 aerials." He's 1.2 aerials. I don't know how you. So actually,
he's
Barry
won
Bannon's
as many aerials as Cameron Dawson.
Though Kieran Westwood won like twice that many aerials. Josh Windass 0.3. That seems damning. How do you boil down a fraction of aerials? That's what I want to know.
Is that the song from Sound of Music?
Oh, how do you solve a problem like Tom Lee's?
So, let's look at. So Bannon's obviously played the most minutes by quite a distance. So that works out at 42 starts, or I guess are they adding them on top? I don't know. Who would that make sense for? Yeah, 42 starts and 2 from the bench. 2 goals, as you said, 8 assists, and 8 yellow cards for himself. So he's put himself about a little bit. But so if we're doing school style grades, where do you feel Bannon sits for the season?
Do you want to leave in me doing the Grange Hill theme tune, or is that going to get us in more lawsuit litigation problems yet again?
I don't know that it was close enough to the actual tune to bother us. I think we're all right.
Bannon is. Do you think Bannon, as in that intro for Grange Hill with the comic book strip that's gone through, he is the sausage on a fork that is brought in with an explosion behind it? Remember that? So I guess Cedric Bannon, like it's really interesting looking at these stats and just kind of thinking about them consistently. Obviously, the player who's been on the pitch the most. I can't remember many games that he's missed. An interesting one would say is how many minutes has there been of football this season? So he must be like well over 90. He must have had something like 96 or 97% in terms of being on the pitch.
I would have thought so, yeah.
I mean, we've looked to him a lot, and to the point where we've even said, as we've said in the review of the Middlesbrough game, very much a player, running on fumes at this point, because
much as this period of time is horrendously draining on players, to be the one kind of ever present in that is a huge strain on.
How much mentally draining do you think it is for Bannon, the fact that he is someone who, as I think you've pointed out quite rightfully, which is one of the many great Richard Miller observations in my book, is that he's a player who's never gone missing. How frustrating must it be for Bannon that you turn up for every game and other players don't?
Yeah, it must be hugely frustrating. I think that was a little bit, obviously they were friends off the field, but I think in Fletcher he kind of had a similar character in that even Fletcher having a bad game, he kind of would generally put a shift in.
Yeah.
And I think there was it was more than just the fact that they were both kind of Scottish and similar age. I think I think there's a bit of a link there in that they have a quite similar attitude to, you know, you've got to get there and you've got to at least put your 7 out of 10 into this. And not every player is able to do that or willing to do that. I don't know.
You're saying a lot of meaningful, beautiful words, Rich, but all I can think about is Bannon and Fletcher at a karaoke singing Perfect Day to each other.
Well, I was thinking more, I Got You, Babe. I got you to ping it long. I got you to run in behind.
Oh, now I'm thinking of Groundhog Day. God, so many loose connections. Barry Bannon at the end of his Wednesday season. It's interesting to look at, like,
I got you, Fletch.
So 2 goals. That feels... We're always looking at Bannon thinking he should score a few more, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm never expecting him to get to the dizzy heights of double figures, but I think he should be at least getting like 5 goals a season, you know?
Well, it's a Wednesday trait for as long as I can remember, unfortunately, is not enough goals from other areas of the pitch.
Yes.
Maybe Megson's team was the last one that kind of got good amounts from other places. I mean, if you look at where the goals have come from, Fletcher with his 13, Murphy with 9, which is very creditable for him and his position that he plays.
Absolutely insane. Yeah.
Atty's picked up 6. Jordan Rhodes scored 3, and they were all in one blooming game. Not that they count less, but they count less.
Jordan Rhodes' goals are like buses, effectively, right?
The first one's good, and the other 2 you could do without. Save it. Save that bus for another day. No, there's more people coming later. Windass has got 3, which again I think is a pretty decent tally for the amount of time he's actually spent on the pitch. I mean, you're looking at minutes played, 471 minutes and 3 goals. It's pretty staggering stuff. Harris has got 3, Luongo's got 3, and Bannon's got... But it's like you quite quickly get into folks that... I mean, if you're scoring less than 5 times in a season, you're not a reliable goal scorer in any meaningful way, are you?
Yeah.
You can't be... It's a fluke that you scored. It's not a thing that was planned. Because if you can't score every 6 or 7 games with any consistency, that's was more than that, isn't it? Yeah. You know, roughly, if you get 5 goals, you got a goal every about 10 games, which means you probably win as a game out of every 10 games. You probably win a game or turn the draw into a loss. That's not something you can build a house on, is it? And if you've got less than that, then it's barely worth making any note of. So for me with Bannon, despite the season the team has had and him being the heartbeat of the team, I don't feel like it's very often that the team doesn't play well because of Bannon.
Yeah.
And as a result, I think he's had a pretty good year. I think it'd be pretty harsh to go, lower than a B minus for him. But I don't know how you feel about that. We're building this scale as we go, really.
We are building the scale as we go. But I mean, effectively, we are looking at... It's funny, we're looking at... It's not always the case. As I'm looking at the players, the same thing.
If Bannon's not a B, we're going to have to plumb the depths of the alphabet in a way that school teachers are rarely called to do.
I know. It's kind of like, it's more like an E, but like with a purple star. There's no like gold stars. It's just, it's now a new language of rainbow stars that the teachers are kind of making up on the spot. And they're like, God, I best be writing this down because, people's parents are going to get at me and being like, why did you give little Johnny a red star? I'm like, what does red star mean again? Is it like he tries hard, he has a nice smile, he gave me an apple that one time, all those type of things. So I think you can't give Bannon less than... Bannon's probably still our best performer for the season, even if Bannon is underwhelming by Bannon standards. Right? Which I think is often the key to a lot of Sheffield Wednesday games this season. So I think you have to give Bannon a B+.
I think that's fair.
Because, we look at this and, like, through whatever rating system they have on Who Scored, which I still, yeah. Point to aerials. I mean, it is a science come up by something, but I don't. It's kind of hilarious, isn't it? Really? But I mean, for them to say he's got a 6.93 rating, I think he's probably consistently one of our best players this season. I think he's definitely going to be a B+ for Barry Bannon.
I concur. I think B+ is a good.
So let's carry on and build the plane as we fly it here on Different Gravy. Different Gravy, not just another Sheffield Wednesday podcast. We're a mid-table Sheffield Wednesday podcast with hopes and aspirations of a top 6.
This is just a spoiler alert. I've got a player that I think deserves at least an A.
Okay,
but we'll get to them. We'll get to them in time.
Let's carry on.
That's a flash forward to a dramatic moment later. Dominic Iorfa. 3,525 minutes played.
This is a really interesting one with Iorfa. Could you almost say that Iorfa is a tale of two seasons? First half and second half, much like Gary Monk's Sheffield Wednesday and Gary Monk's reign?
I think you could.
I mean, things never have such clear, life doesn't have such kind of clear boundaries, right? But it feels like he's very much a testament to that.
I'm just trying to remember, has he always been playing centre-back?
We had a bit near the beginning, right, where we said that he looked if he was going to be a right-back, and then actually we tried it and it didn't really work out so well. He had a good couple of stints at right-back at the end of the season before this one, under Bruce.
I mean, he's a bit, he was, I think by trade a right back traditionally, but I was just wondering how much of this season. But it looks like pretty much all the season he was playing centre back for us.
So again, then there's a question: how do you kind of average out a player who's maybe post Christmas not been so good, but then before Christmas was very, very good? And we remembered kind of going into transfer rumour time in the January transfer window. Rumours that maybe a team like Burnley would come in with a staggering 15, 16 million quid on the table, and we'd go, thank you very much.
I think by and large he's had a fairly good season. I think he's been a bit of a revelation at centre-back. There's big frailties there. His concentration is not by no means perfect. He does make mistakes, but one of the big things he's got going for him is he's so quick. He can often make up for his own mistakes. I think one of the big problems we have defensively is we've got 3 guys that would be really good alongside a solid, dependable. This is a much higher level of football, so the comparison is in some ways a bit silly. But Rio Ferdinand with Nemanja Vidic at his side looked all the things that you wanted Rio Ferdinand to be.
Yeah,
classy, quick, reading the game, nipping things in the bud, playing passes forward. But he needed the staunch, no-nonsense bruiser alongside him. And often when he had another partner, Rio Ferdinand looked very, very average. And we've kind of got 3 centre-backs that look like they need a no-nonsense.
They need someone else. Yeah.
I think Iorfa and Burner is the closest thing to that, because Burner's not built like a big, staunch, dependable centre-back, but by and large he plays like one. So the fact that you can then have Iorfa fill in behind him and make up for any deficiencies he has, that works. When it's worked well, that looks like our best partnership. I don't think Lees and Burner works well enough. We've tried it too often and it just doesn't. I'll be severely disappointed if we see Lees and Burner as.
But then it felt like Burner Iorfa did have a decent partnership at one point, right?
Yeah.
What happened to that?
Well, the whole tale of the 2 seasons thing it's interesting because there was a commenter on House Talk and I sort of went back to them, but they were sort of showing Kadeem Harris, like almost all of Harris's good stats. So his goals and his assists were in the first half of the season. And second half of the season, he's done almost nothing in terms of... He's worked hard, but he hasn't had those results. And I sort of asked, well, what does it look like when he was playing with Fletcher? And what does it look like when he wasn't playing with Fletcher? But that's kind of the whole team. It's so stark, that drop-off. If you look at the run of fixtures... up till Christmas, we basically won almost every game with a few draws in between and a very rare loss. We get to Christmas and we lose every game with a couple of draws dropped in and a very, very rare win. Fletcher's not the only thing. There was the Westwood, the goalkeeping situation.
I mean, we're not going to look at, we're looking at the playing squad for this. We're not going to look at, Gary Monk, who is the manager, who is largely been. Maybe we should. But I mean, do you find it funny that just looking back now we don't know the exact time frame of things, but it feels a lot like Monk sorting out the dressing room, but making things worse for doing that.
Yeah, but so I just think there's so many factors built in. I'm trying to think when the last was West Brom. When was the last game Westwood played? Because we still won games after that. So Dawson came in for the Birmingham game, which was that was the one where I don't think he particularly covered him. So yeah, so his first game was the Birmingham game. So after the draw with Birmingham away, we beat Charlton, we beat Brentford, we drew with Derby, we thumped Forest, and we beat Bristol City, all with Dawson in goal. So it's all these things like these combinations, the fact Dawson was in goal. The dressing room business, to an extent, we won games after that. In the immediate sort of aftermath, that's where we got ourselves up to third. We kind of continued a really good run of form and got ourselves up to third. Losing Fletcher feels like a bigger thing than anything else. I do think the team was very much built around what Fletcher was able to do. So, yeah, the half and half counts for everybody. I suppose in terms of it's going to be a very long road if we take this long with everybody. So I think we've just got to kind of assess each player in isolation and just look at how they've done. And I think with Iorfa, even though his form has suffered along with the rest of the team, it's quite rare that it's his fault that we're conceding the goal. He's maybe not always the best at catching up or helping, and he has made some big errors. The penalty he gave away was really foolish. In a way that you just don't expect him to behave really against Fulham. But I think by and large, I've been impressed with him at centre-back. I would quite like us to start with him. I'd like him to be our starting centre-back next season. I just would like a partner for him that's not currently in the squad. And I think Iorfa probably a B, maybe. He's been one of the highlights. I've really enjoyed watching him.
Yeah, I know. I think a B is fair, because I think that's, if he was a little bit more consistent, then he'd definitely have like an A-, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can go with a B. I'm happy with that.
So we move on to Kadeem Harris, who's played 3,389 minutes.
3 goals.
They've got the height and weight of each of these players, which is quite funny. Just 67 kilograms for Kadeem Harris. Sorry.
In the blue corner, coming in at 175 centimetres. 3 goals and 4 assists. I feel like we should have seen more from Harris. It's been a little bit staggering that he didn't get a few more goals and a few more assists.
But then again, he again for me is someone there's been more good things than bad. He's very rarely let us down. So I think generally the whole season, I'm trying to take away the fact that we ended in such a miserable, we were down at the start of this episode. It's been hard to pick ourselves up enthusiasm-wise several times towards the end of this season. It's been grim. It's been awful. But I'm looking at Kadeem Harris as a player who's come in here on a free. He's played almost every minute of every game as a winger, which traditionally is a position where, you blow hot and cold and you maybe get 10 good games and 10 awful games and some stuff in between. And I just like a guy that always puts a shift in, always looks willing. I think he's taken to his new position at wing-back like a duck to water. He looks so at home and comfortable there. He's got some frustrating traits in his game. He's got some deficiencies, that his shooting is not as good as it should be. We've talked about the classic Kadeem Harris cutting in and putting a really lovely curling effort 3 foot wide of the post.
But that's very much like
that's very much powder puff, isn't it? There's something a little bit always lacking in conviction. That's always been Sheffield Wednesday for this season, and I think a little bit of element is from all its players. And I think one of the starting roles is Kadeem Harris in that. It's like, it's almost incredible.
Almost incredible, yeah. But wingers are dependent on their who they've got to play to in the middle. You know, you could be a wonderful crosser of the ball. I mean, we've seen Atty, who, you know, we'll get to him soon. And personally, I'm sad that it looks like he's going. But if you're a winger, an awful centre forward to play with, because he's never in the box.
True. I mean, like, definitely for the triumph of having, you know, Fletcher up front is, I think you were saying just how much, you know, he kind of really loved having it served on the platter, especially like Harris with some of his floaty chip crosses.
Yes, that sort of sand wedge cross that he hits with his left foot, his favourite sort of cross. Yes. Push my defender to the byline, little chipped sort of dink cross into the middle of the box. And Fletcher loved that. He probably should have scored more. Harris should have more assists because Fletcher probably should have buried more of them. I'm really, in many ways, he's maybe my favourite sort of the players we own and we have next season. He's maybe my favourite player we've had this year.
That's fair. I think that's a very fair thing to say, I would say. Do you think that we're leading to a mark, which I think the mark I'm going to offer is a B+?
Yeah, I think that feels fair. It's funny, people might think like we're looking at this dreadful season, and some people, you know, full of hyperbole, have been saying it's the worst season ever. It's maybe one of the more disappointing seasons in recent memory, and might be looking at the fact we've kind of given the first three players quite high scores. But
I'm also wondering, I mean, if we... Sorry.
Oh, well, I'm just saying you've got to separate the individual from the collective effort. And as long as you can only do so much in a team sport as one man.
Exactly.
And we have not finished in the position we finished because Kadeem Harris has let us down. I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's other people, it's individual errors, it's lack of heart. But Harris has not shown a lack of heart. He's never really been found wanting in terms of keeping at it and going at it, even though he should be knackered.
It's been a sporting team of catastrophic improv that we all kind of get together. But individually to a man, I think they're a good, decent... they're a good, decent performances. They're decent players. We've had some all right performances, but exactly, collectively, it's not been good. And I feel that was my kind of summary. Some of the marks I put down for the Borough game in my kind of full notes were actually some of the players were all right, but unfortunately, it's a collective handling, which is very poor.
Yeah, that's why I think at the end of this we should talk a bit about Monk, because so as an individual player, you've got your own lane, and you can only really sort of, work your own lane to an extent. And as a manager, you can only pick from the players you've got. But the question with any manager is, are they getting the value out of the players that they have at their disposal? Are they producing just enough, not enough, or more than they should out of the players that they've got? That's the question you have to ask when it comes to the manager. But I don't think that necessarily impacts on Kadeem Harris, who, I'm happy with a B+. I think he's had a really good first season when you look at it on its own. And I'm really happy that he's a Sheffield Wednesday player, and we've got him to draw on next season. I'd be happy to see him play either wing. I'd even be intrigued to see him playing as in a role kind of behind a front man or around a front man as well. We only saw that once in the season, but it produced a goal for the team. He just looks a very decent player and very rarely injured, which you can't be angry at. All round a pretty good first season for Kadeem Harris. Burner is up next. Just over 3,000 minutes of football for Burner. He's got one goal.
He does have one goal, yes.
Should have maybe had more. What do you think about Jules?
It's really interesting. I mean, he's a free signing. First half of the season, very good. Second half of the season, maybe a little bit less good. Still, I don't think we've ever seen less than a 6 out of 10 from Julian Burner. Individually, he looked like a real revelation. Remember, Rich, that he's in your isn't he in your team of the decade?
He was dropped.
He was dropped.
Oh, you.
I retroactively dropped him from the team of the decade. It was impacting his performances on the pitch. I think it's interesting the journey that he's had, because when he came in, I think we all thought or hoped he was a backup because we were going to get Michael Hector.
Yes.
And in some ways, he's suffered from that comparison, particularly the wild knockabout game from last weekend. Michael Hector is a hell of a player. And
yes.
And he's that big, calm influence that we kind of seems to get the best out of Tom Lees. Probably would have got the... I mean, can you imagine watching Hector and Iorfa play together? That would be a real treat. So I think at first, he does suffer from that comparison. He's not that level of player. But as you say, he's a guy came in with not much reputation. Kind of interesting, a player who's late in his career going for a little jaunt because he quite likes English football. So, he's arrived on our shores 28, 29 years old. And I think, again, by and large, I've been broadly happy with what he's done. He's slow. He is slow. And he turns very slowly. And as the team has been more exposed, we've seen more of his deficiencies. But by and large, I've been fairly happy with him again. I've enjoyed his presence around the club. He seems like a fantastic character. Who doesn't love that big cheeser of a grin of his? I don't think he deserves quite the same measure of praise as someone like Harris. So I am more tempted to go something like a C+, I think, for him. But I don't know how you feel.
I think that's a little bit harsh. I think he's definitely in the mid to lower B range.
Okay.
I could maybe meet you in the middle at a B-.
Okay.
As part of his compromise.
Meet me halfway. That sounds good. Okay, so we'll go B- for Burner. And what about everybody's favourite Tatiscon, William Palmer?
Exactly.
Who apparently is a defender, centre, left and right, a defensive midfielder and a midfielder right.
We've seen him in midfield right. I think we've seen him in both those defensive. I've never seen him as a holding midfielder.
No.
That's never been.
I think that might be his sort of, a bit like Tommy Spur. I think that might have been his position coming through. I think at Tranmere he tended to play holding midfield for them. But yeah, anyways, Liam Palmer has played 2,878 minutes. And I think when he's missed games, I don't think he's ever been dropped for form, Palmer.
No.
This season. So it's always been injuries, which he's maybe had more of this year than we've seen previously.
I think so, yeah. Well, it seems to be more of the conversation previously that he's been ready and available, but we haven't really wanted to look to him. He has been definitely in the days of, Hunt. Jack Hunt was his name. I always end up forgetting. I always end up forgetting Hunt's full name. I'm going to be honest.
I call him Jackie Hunt.
Jackie Hunt. Love it. Beautiful.
It sounds like a footballer from the olden days.
Exactly. Have a picture of him with a striped shirt, black and white, with some baggy shorts and his arms folded.
And a fag on.
Exactly.
Because he used to in those days.
He did. He used to, yeah.
Not a full pipe. Too much of a cheeky chappy for a full pipe. But yes. Yeah, a fag with a really long, ash hanging off the end. Right, Liam Palmer.
Liam Palmer. Well, Liam Palmer's been a fair bit of a kind of revelation in terms of fullback, right, for us. And he's also a player who we would not have expected to have done quite as well, especially in that kind of back three. I thought he was probably the most consistent performer that we had. It was unfortunate that we picked up an injury because it looked like him, Bernard Iorfa was probably the three.
Yeah.
In terms of those defenders, he's been a very, very. I think it's been undervalued just how versatile he is. And I think the interesting thing is previous seasons.
This year, Luke?
I think he has. I think he definitely has, Liam Palmer. I think he's just been very, very consistent with his play.
And he's played everywhere.
He has.
I'm almost shocked at the revelation myself, Luke. I'm coming to it's a moment of realization for me. But he's been really good all season. And he's played left back, right back, and centre back. And he's done all of them really well.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh.
So are we going to give him a B+?
I think deserves that. Yeah. I'm almost giddy. I'm almost thinking an A-, but I think that's too far. I don't know what's Liam. I don't remember him making mistakes this season.
No.
I'm racking my brains. I'm sure somebody will remind me of a time that he's done something wrong, but I'm struggling to think of errors leading to goals from Liam Palmer in a season where his teammates have been falling over themselves to do such things. Yeah, I think. Do you want to go A-?
Yeah, I think
Let's
I do.
do it. Wow, I'm shocked. I'm also shocked that the next player in terms of minutes played, Luke, is Adam Reach.
Adam Reach, who, like I said at the beginning of the show, was, as my prediction for the season, that he was going to be our star player, and he's been garbage.
I think
Garbage is a
it's
strong
probably
word.
mine as well.
Well, garbage is a strong word. Disappointing is probably a more reflective and probably a better term for it, let's be honest.
Garbage. Hot, stinking garbage.
Hot stinking garbage. Yeah, sure. Let's go with that.
I don't think we should mince words. Particularly, he's had a season of two halves. One half was bad and the other half was awful. I'm amazed he's played so much.
I know. But I think there's been a lot of... But don't you also think there's been... it's been a season full of desperation. And also, don't you think there's a lot of times of like, oh, I hope Reach gets over whatever's ailing him and puts in a decent starting performance. Or Reach is on the bench. He's got to be better than what's here.
I know. I know there was a long period, maybe even half the season, where Murphy and Reach kind of shared duties on that right wing, didn't they? But I think Murphy's very much made it his own, pretty much since Christmas. But definitely in this period of time, the post-lockdown period. But Reach has gone. I think he was probably my pick for star man of the season ahead of time as well. And this is ridiculous because why should I have emotions and things like that about this? But I feel let down by him. I don't know what's wrong, whether it's something that's in his personal life, whether it's a personality. Maybe he's had a personality clash in the same way other players seem to have had with Monk. But he has had, I think he's had a period of injury as well in the midst of everything. But I thought with all the years that we've had with Adam Reach, I had a pretty good picture of what he was. And the other sort of low ebb of the Chancery era under Yos, Reach was the sort of shining light in that. Mm-hmm. He was the guy that was pulling us through things almost on his own. He's been terrible. He's got one goal this season.
That was Middlesbrough, wasn't it?
It is. I mean, 6 assists is pretty good still, considering how poor he's been. To pick up 6 assists is fairly good. But imagine if he'd been trying or playing even halfway decent. Well, do you know what I mean?
I know. I got that.
But it's gone from I would have said Adam Reach, our best player or one of our best players, build the team around a player like him, all these sort of things. And honestly, if he went this summer, I would not care.
Wow.
I'm sad that it would be it's happened when it's happened, on the back of such a disappointing year. But he looks completely devoid of confidence. He looks like he doesn't care or want to be there, and that's very, very disappointing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What can you say for that? Are we going to go with a C for Adam Reach?
C- maybe.
C-. Let's give a C-.
Okay, let's move on to
that was depressing.
The yang to Adam Reach's yin, promising young Russian prospect Jakub Murphy.
Jakub Twinkletoes Murphy.
Jakub Twinkletoes Nostrovia, or whatever it is.
Yeah. What an absolute revelation of a signing. Like, I think we thought he was going to be a decent signing, but I think to even have the mileage that we've had out of a player like him is pretty astonishing to think about, really. The fact that he nearly got so close to double figures for goals is incredible.
He makes this football lark look easy at times.
He does indeed, yes.
Yeah, he's been he's been the bright spark in the darkness of the second half of the season, because he just seems to have grown and grown, and weirdly seems to be able to pull out goals even when he's not looking like he's having a particularly good game or a particularly good little run of form. He still manages to be dangerous and make things happen, and that's a tremendous knack to have, particularly as a wide man. He's been a real treat and particularly post-lockdown, undoubtedly our best player post-lockdown. And I don't know if there's any possibility of this, any vague possibility at all. But if we could have him back, I'd have him in a heartbeat.
Definitely.
What are we thinking score-wise?
Score-wise for... I think it's an A-.
Okay.
For Murphy, because I mean he's definitely a player who, like any wingers, can be inconsistent, and the realm of inconsistency and talent that they show really shows where they are and where they end up in the world. I do feel we've been quite fortunate in getting a player of his standing. I think, was it one of the games before that we talked about him being a yo-yo player,
Yes. Too good for the Championship, but not quite good enough for the Premier League. Yeah, that could well be his lot in life, unfortunately. Go on, sorry.
No, I think that's mostly what we can say. But I mean, even though he has, had those inconsistencies and those frustrations, he's been very, very good.
Let's move on to a contentious chap. Some of these will not be quite so long as others, but this one might be one of the longer ones. Tom Lees, club captain.
I could have been a contentious player. Tom Lees. Oh my God, Tom Lees. Oh dear. I think it's a deep
decline.
I think he, he's got a D next to his name. It's a D, C for that he's a, that he's a centre back, a central defender, but also it's like a D, but we kind of wish he'd be a C. Maybe that's what it kind of means. So I think I'm going for a D+ for Tom Lees. He's been bad. He's been really bad. It's bad.
It's really sad to see what's happened with him. I don't know what. Presumably he's got a year left on his contract. Is that right?
Yeah. I know he's definitely in contract. Yes, he's got another year, because I think I feel like we gave him 2 years or 3 years, like a couple of years ago or last year. I just
wonder if we could, jazz him up and put a bow on him and try and flog him to Preston or something. I don't know. I think I
feel like when you said put a bow on him, like you were going to take him down to a dog show or something like this.
Well, that's kind of, yeah. But I'm trying to convince them that this, mongrel with one eye is a Bichon Frise.
Oh, very good.
I might be tempted to just go straight D, but I'll be, I'll give leniency and go for D+. I'll join you in the D+ side of things. Let's motor along to Captain Fox Morgan.
Fox Morgan, who, I don't know, we were talking at the head of the podcast before we kind of got into the meat of things about how, there are articles linking him as the agent talk with numerous clubs, most of which are making me very angry, because linked with, he's got offers on the table from Middlesbrough, Barnsley and Coventry City. I'm like, great. I can't wait to be jilted at the altar while Fox Morgan runs off with some two-bit hussy.
Two-bit hussy from Coventry.
Coventry City.
From Warwickshire. Can't believe it. Run off with some two-bit hussy from Warwickshire.
Exactly. I
might be able to take it if it was someone from Royal Sutton Coldfield. Not Coventry. But I do wonder, looking at the clubs he's linked with, so one, there's the possibility that maybe it ends up that the best offer on the table for him is Wednesdays, which is something that Alan Nixon mentioned sort of early in the discussions.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, it does make me sort of wonder about the relative quality of our squad and players compared to the league we're in. Because if someone who has looked like a bit of a star man for us at times is only getting offers from very middling or lower.
Sure, but I mean, I definitely. And the hilarious thing was, I think, like prior to this, we talked about if he doesn't accept, maybe he could be batting his eyelashes and winning some kind of plaudits from the Premiership, or maybe we thought he might be like one of those players who might make it to, you know, if a team like West Brom didn't make it, then he could probably make it there. Really,
but.
He'd been linked with Forest and Stoke. I could see like Stoke.
I suppose that's a bit better.
Stoke burning off some of their, you know, parachute payments on, you know, maybe an appealing 2-3 year deal for Morgan Fox. Not as
burning some of the £10 notes on the flame of Morgan Fox.
Not as one of their like, you know, landmark signings. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's maybe that's the case. Maybe he'll come back. I'd like him to come back. I think it's a real testament to who he is as a player, his mental fortitude to come back from being a player that we all kind of, you know, drag through a hedge collectively as a fan base.
Yeah.
To come back and to put in such a great season that he's put in.
Do you find it surprising, though, that he has played like half the games of a lot of these players? I'm surprised he's only played 24 or started 24 games.
But I feel like there was a period where we weren't sure. We didn't really know who he was kind of going to be, I want to say.
I know, but it just feels... I agree he's had an amazing turnaround and, you know, started the season playing Liam Palmer left back because that was a better option than a guy that had sort of spent his whole life there. So, no, he's had a tremendous turnaround. It's just interesting to me because he also had a whacking great injury for a long time. It's just interesting to me that he's played half the games of some of these players further up the list. Still, like, you know, played ninth most. So that, you know, if you just picked an 11 out of those nine, these people that are on the list, he'd be in the defence. So he's played a lot of football. But for a guy that was maybe a potentially kind of player of the season-esque calibre, to have actually played just over half the season is just noteworthy, I suppose. It's not particularly it's not a damning sort of criticism either. But I've been really pleased with him. I think, as you say, a guy that's kind of pulled himself up from the mire and his bootstraps. A player that probably lots of fans would have been happy to see go and now disappointed. It looks like he's on his way out. And again, defensively, hopefully you look with fullbacks, they'll make a bit of a contribution further forward. Well, he's got a couple of goals. He also had an assist. I think he probably had some nearly assists as well. You know, like balls that he put in that caused problems that then resulted in goals. But you don't get the assist for those, unfortunately, because he was putting in some really good deep crosses before he got injured. So I think a very good season on his scale of things. Where are we falling? Are we talking B? Are we talking?
I think it's a B+ for Morgan Fox.
B+.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm happy with that. I think that's fair. Cammy Dawson. Oh dear. You know, I've gone from talking about Tom Lees, who was a DC, and now we've got a CD in terms of initials. Yes.
Oh, Cameron Dawson. And maybe CD is somewhere where it lies, somewhere within that ballpark. It's going to have to be a D+.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. That is, you know, in terms of players you'll be happy to see line up. I just really hope I don't see any of these keepers again in a Wednesday shirt. I know I'm going to be disappointed in that, but I've got so little faith in. I know there's like almost the cult of Megson thing now happening around Westwood, the cult of Westwood. He's 35 years old. And when you look, we are one of the top teams in the league for errors leading to goals. So that is goals that weren't dangerous situations, weren't goals and turned into goals. Westwood is responsible for 3/4 of those. So he was dropped on merit. I don't know where this new story that he was wonderful and then he fell out with Monk comes from. None of them are good enough. I don't want to see any of them anymore. Please take them away from me. Away from my royal chambers. Yeah, D. Did you say D plus?
D plus, yeah.
Okay,
I don't know where the plus. I don't know where the plus comes from, but there's still this mentality, unfortunately, around like Dawson Wildsmith. They're only young, you know.
If you or I were as bad at our jobs as those three have been this season, we wouldn't have a job anymore.
Yes, yeah, it's true.
Luke, your job is to put the widgets on the MacGuffins. Oh, right, I've stapled a MacGuffin to my face and I'm punching myself with a widget. Oh, Luke, you're only young.
You'll get over it.
You'll get better.
You'll get better, yeah.
Stephen Fletcher.
Wow, to go on from Cameron Dawson to Stephen Fletcher, it's not, a little bit, it's funny that game we had where we talked about Alex Hunt being pictured next to Dominic Iorfa.
Oh, yes, yeah.
You need the David Attenborough or Richard Attenborough, whichever the one it is. Which one is it? It's one of the Attenboroughs. To remind us that these are of the same species.
David, that's David, yeah.
David, yeah. You need to remind them, it's difficult to remind yourself that these two are both professional footballers.
Yes,
and
at the same
one has been very, very good and the other's been atrocious. And it's been a wondrous season for Stephen Fletcher, despite, I think, for a player who's 33, who will be 34 next season, to have his best career within football and get 13 goals and have 2 assists on top of that. Let's just put that on there as well. And to just be an absolute real talisman to how we play. And the staggering thing is we signed him on a free. He was a real speculation, basically a player kind of dropped down from the Premier League for a big contract. We seemed to get him on a 4-year contract, which apparently from what we understand and know is that was the thing that deterred him from signing for Norwich because they only offered him 3 seasons.
Yeah.
So we went all out to get a player of his standard and quality, and it's been disappointing to the point where, we said previously, what the hell are we going to do? We've got Fletcher for another 2-3 years at numerous times. And then if someone said to you, he's going to sign a 4-year deal, you'd be like, okay. And then someone would come back to you and say, but his best season will be his 4th season, and it will be a very, very good season. You would not believe that person. Much like someone's going to come to you and be like, last year's like, well, this time next year there's a pandemic and everything just crumbles, basically.
You're saying that the two are related?
Yes.
Stephen Fletcher has sacrificed the world for another 6 months at the top. A tremendous, as you say, the season of his life, one of the best seasons I've seen a striker have for Sheffield Wednesday. And I know I'm showing my age in that, but I was too late for most of the David Hirst party. Prior to this,
Rich just turned up with a present, and then everyone's like, "It's done. The party's done. Go home."
Stephen McLean managed to pull together 20 goals, but was never as so fun to watch as Stephen Fletcher was this season. Mellor managed to drag himself to 20 goals, didn't he? Mm-hmm. Neil Mellor. But Fletcher was on the course to have a season where he would probably have hit 20 and then rolled on further. It's a real shame that the injury once again kind of curtailed that. But he was the heartbeat of the team, the linchpin that everything was built around. And unfortunately, it's all fallen apart since he went. But that's not his fault, really. I think comfortably just a straight A.
Yeah, I would agree.
And I'm gutted we don't get to see another year of him.
Well,
again,
maybe so, maybe not. But yeah.
It's how people feel, though, about the fact they didn't play the extra games, and he sort of looked like he pretended to be injured in his last game.
Yeah.
That's the question with these players that said, oh, no, I don't want to do those extra games. I don't know how easy it will be for the fans to kind of take them back. I don't personally care. I wouldn't hold it against someone, but I can just see. I can see it's going to be an uphill battle for them. Next up, Sam Hutchinson.
This is who scored. I feel like it's really baiting me. Really. Who scored? And I have a difficult relationship at the best of times, anyway. But Sam Hutchinson.
Who scored? It's so accusatory, and you're like, I don't know. You're the one. You've got all the information.
Tell me.
Find out.
Sam Hutchinson. What can we say about Sam Hutchinson?
He's played 23 games this season.
Quite astonishing. It's quite a lot of mileage. 23 games. Let's just get the old calculator out on this one, Richie.
Bloop, 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 bloop.
That's turning Rich into a calculator.
We take 1,796 minutes. We divide them by 23 appearances. That's an average of 78 minutes. That can't be right. So he's played like most games. He's played like 78. He's played the bulk of some games. What the hell? How did we get any kind of sense of mileage out of Sam Hutchinson?
I distinctly remember a fair amount of criticism coming Hutch's way during games that he played. I remember being very frustrated that him and Bannon were sat on each other's toes. I remember some good passes, but some passes that went straight to the opposition and put us in really difficult positions. And also him being very responsible for the constant fouls round the box that we seem to give away. I mean, he almost got a yellow card every other time he appeared for the team, which is pretty astonishing to still hit 10 yellow cards despite the fact you played half the season.
Yeah. The one with the most yellow cards for Wednesday, beyond Bannon. Yeah.
I can't remember a huge amount of great stuff or terrible stuff. I do remember that sort of vague frustration. The aura of thinking about Sam Hutchinson's season is kind of like a dark orange. It's not quite red. I'm thinking just a C, just right there in the middle. C.
I think that's fair. That's probably what I was going to say with Hutchinson as well. So yeah, let's give him a C.
Moses Odubajo.
Oh my word, God, this is painful, Rich. This is so painful.
Moses Odubajo has played less than Sam Hutchinson.
I can't. I generally can't. That's a whole 19 minutes less. So there's and genuinely, it's 20 and 3 sub appearances for Hutch, 19 plus 3 for Odubajo.
Yeah.
Plangarella. Oh, Moses. Is
it 3 penalties?
I think so.
No, more than that, wasn't it? It's 2 in one game against Preston, the Derby one, and then another one, 4 penalties. So averaging, they do this with strikers. They say he's got X amount of goals per start. So I think it's only fair to do it with defenders. So averaging more than a penalty every 5 games. Wow.
So basically, we've conceded 16 penalties this season.
That seems so many.
I know. Well, we're actually third for conceded penalties. I think we talked about this before, like Derby. Yeah. We're actually pretty high for that. Think about like Barnsley, who've struggled. And like, if things go as they are, if there's no more points deductions, then Barnsley have stayed up and they conceded 6 penalties. Wigan, a team who've struggled massively and, despite exceptional form for the second half of the season, have generally been poor.
Have any teams
5 penalties?
Less? Has Odubajo conceded more penalties than any teams?
No. Wigan conceded 5, but I mean, it's close. But effectively, that's like 60% of Wigan's penalties that they've conceded. They've only won 3, to be fair. I mean, we've actually had 15 that we've won.
Wow, okay.
Conceded 16. So, I mean, that's pretty substantial. The funny thing is,
remember, we haven't really deserved either.
Yeah, there's so many that I thought should have been and never were, and some that I'm like, how was that a thing?
Yeah.
Anyway, Moses Odubajo. Let's go with a C- for Moses.
Okay.
I think that's fair. We've spent a lot of time and a lot of energy trying to defend him as a player.
I think that's maybe fair because it's like he's like 90% C and 10% E or F. So I think, that's probably just about fair enough. So amazingly, Kieran Lee is number 14 in terms of players who've played the most minutes. 28 games in a total, 20 starts, and 1,675 minutes played. No goals, 3 assists. What have you thought about Kieran Lee?
Oh, Kieran Lee. And this is astonishing as well, that Kieran Lee's played effectively more games but then had less minutes than Hutchinson.
Yeah.
But maybe that tells quite a big story about how much Kieran Lee has in the tank at 32.
Yes, yeah.
As opposed to Sam Hutchinson, who's still 30, but also damning that Sam Hutchinson is a man who's, spent a lot of time in rehabilitation and, is dealing with, some maybe defective kind of body parts and stuff in that regards.
Yes.
Yeah. Kieran Lee's been the mileage we've got out of Kieran Lee's been something else, really. Yeah. Very much maybe we have aspirations above this, but he's very much been the Honda Civic of this
of the season, hasn't he? Really?
I don't know anything about cars, but yeah. Real Honda Civic of a guy. Yeah.
I'm just saying he's kind of steady. He's got a steady engine. He's got a lot of mileage on the clock. You can probably buy one and run it till it's like 350,000 clicks.
Yeah,
mileage. You can probably run it to about, what's that going to be, like 200,000 miles?
Something like that.
That's remarkable. We've got as much mileage out of Kieran Lee.
I think looking at when we were sort of previewing the season, we were looking at maybe getting 10 games out of Kieran Lee, and I think in fact we've got more than double that, and we've definitely had those highlights where it's looked like time has never passed, and we've had the old Kieran Lee back. There's also been frustrating times where we've had the opposite. But we have to look at this season as a bonus. I know some people there's a bit of talk. I hear people talk about giving him another year, but I just don't think he's reliable enough. I think there have been good bits where you think, like I say, like he's never been away, but they have been easily matched, if not overtaken, by the moments where he's looked tired after 30 minutes and kind of he's run his race. Mentally at the very least. I kind of hope we don't give him another year, even though I've enjoyed the bits of this year. It has been a little extra bonus. It's been, I don't know, a little weekend with a partner that it's not going to be anything long term, but it's just a sort of fun. It's a fling. A little extra bonus fling.
Excellent.
But I think we need to pack those memories away in the shoebox and pop them under the stairs now. But I've enjoyed it, and I think he's generally done all right. He's not let us down. We've not been sat here going, if only Kieran Lee hadn't done X. And I think for that, I'm thinking maybe like a B-, something like that.
Yeah, I think that seems fair.
We've got more than we expected from him, I think, is the key thing. Ati R.I.P. Probably.
Possibly.
R.I. possible.
The 6 goals. That's not bad. That's really not bad. In a bit part capacity, he's had more goals than maybe some other players we would have expected. Maybe some of the players who had more time on the pitch who we would have expected near the top. Let's consider the fact that, as we said, Bannon should have scored a few more.
Yeah.
We would have liked to have seen Harris score a few more. To have that ratio for that amount is probably pretty good. Again, it's the problem with Adi Nuyu, the fact that it's not so great to start, but we need him as a squad player. He's a great squad striker, something different from the bench, different dimensions to the game, to his game, and to what he brings to us as well. It's another Adi Nuyu season, really.
I think he's been underutilised this season. I don't think we've made as much use of him as we could and should have. And maybe the times when we've thrown him on, it's not always made sense. I think we know what we get from Ati, and as you say, that 6 goals is probably a little bit above what you almost expect for the amount of football he's played. But maybe as much as Jordan Rhodes, Ati depends on the chances he gets. And having guys that are actually able to put the ball in the box has meant Ati's looked more dangerous. And his goal against Fulham, I mean, in terms of a sign-off, it looks like he's gone. That was what all the kind of the posts on social media from the players were sort of intimating. I think that's a shame. I would have liked to see him maybe have one more year. As you say, I think to get a guy that is your 3rd or 4th choice, that offers so much and is so reliable, there's big boots to fill in more ways than one for the person that's taking up Ati Nuyu's space in our squad next season. But I love that he got to 50 goals, and I think he can walk away. He's done really well for Ati. This is a good season for him. One of his better seasons at Hillsborough in terms of goals he's got. Again, I'm thinking maybe something around a B, maybe a B+.
I'd give him a B. I think a B is fair.
Yeah. Massimo Luongo, we've talked a bit about him already, but he started 17 games, come off the bench in 10, and played 1,474 minutes and got 3 goals.
Difficult to look at a player who so much, hasn't played anywhere near as much as he should have done. And then the hilarity of that is we said he looked like he's maybe played a bit too much near the end of the season.
Yes.
And when he's on form and when he's on point, he looks like he has everything that we need. I I hope that we're not regretting this signing. He's got another 2 years in the bank on his contract. I think that's what he's got. I think he's got a 3-year deal. I really want to see him kick on next season and be a more important player for us, but I'm going to kind of hold my breath for that because it's all feeling a bit off with him.
We've got to hope that the fact he's a known entity in this league and an important player for a decent squad, decent team for a number of years, outweighs the fact that for us this year he's had a pretty disappointing turn at it, whether it's been injuries or, towards the end of the season, actually his own form. He looked so useful and vital earlier in the season. It's such a shame that when we finally got a run of him, we've worn him to the bone. Quietly hopeful for next season, but for this year, it's been a disappointment. He's not been what we needed him to be, what we wanted him to be, often enough. I think I'm feeling like maybe a C minus.
I think that's a bit harsh.
Okay, C plus, or are you going higher? Okay,
C plus for our.
2 pluses.
No, I was just make some stupid joke about programming languages, which I don't know why. It doesn't actually make any sense whatsoever, really. So a C plus is fine.
C plus plus. Neither of us know what that means, really, but
sounds good, though, doesn't it? Really?
Oh, I'm fluent. Right, we are then on to Kieran Westwood, contentious Kieran. 14 starts. I guess he's played almost every minute of those, apart from, did he get sent off in one game?
Yeah, that was was that the clanger he dropped against Ipswich?
I don't know. Well, there was.
It's Luke's thing where you always think Ipswich is in the league, but it's not actually Ipswich, it's Reading. Oh, fantastic.
Did he get sent off twice?
No, I think it was just once, wasn't it? I don't know. Doesn't matter. He's been crap.
Off against West Brom as well.
I don't know. He's been crap, hasn't he?
He's hard done by, and it's only because Monk couldn't handle his personality. That's the only reason he's out of the squad. He's the best keeper in the league still.
Just staggered anybody who wants to believe any of that stuff, to be honest with you.
It was Palmer who got sent off against West Brom.
Oh, I remember. He absolutely rinsed Liam Palmer, didn't he? He absolutely shouted him to blue in the face. Yeah. Cheers for that, Kieran. Thanks for just acting like a real dick. Really. I don't know.
What are we giving Westwood then? Let's not dwell on it too much.
Well, we knew this was going to be a litany of sighing, didn't we? Really.
We did.
A D.
A D. Yeah, fair enough. We've got next up. Bring on the size. Little Joey Pelopessi.
Joey P. A DMC, which is I think it means it's middling between a D and a C.
Okay, immediately we know what we.
Yeah, exactly. That's the player. That's who he is. That's the wealth. That's where he lives. That's wherever he lives. Where his category is. Joey P. Let's go with a C.
Wow, a charitable C from Luke. He's barely played at all, has he? When you look at a guy that's got another year on a contract, he's had no impact this season at all. Connor Wickham, who has sent a lovely message to the Wednesday fans and team.
What did you say? Read it out, Rich. I can't read.
To Sheffield Wednesday Football Club, thank you for the past 6 months. Thank you to the manager for showing faith to bring me in. Thank you to my teammates that welcomed me in from day one. Thank you to the staff that continue to work behind the scenes to keep the club where it is. And most of all, thank you to the fans for sticking by us and supporting us always. I'm gutted I didn't get to share my goodbyes in the Wednesday shirt in front of you all, but you know what this club means to me. I wish everybody the best of luck and hope one day to see this great club back in the big time. And then it's a little owl emoji and a blue emoji and a white emoji.
That's very sweet.
Classy dude. Classy.
That's very lovely. It's been really disappointing that he's not been. It's been his worst loan spell with the club.
Yeah, pretty comfortably, I would say.
2 goals. I thought he would score a couple more.
Yeah. Well, it's. I think the thing is, we were sort of thinking, he's building up his fitness and he'll get back to some of that old sharpness and a bit No, he's just kind of become a pretty lumbery. He's essentially become another Atty, slightly more mobile, but it's a shame to see this guy that was so full of everything. I mean, at times he just looked like he could do, the sort of guy that would like kids playing in the park could like pick it up in defensive midfield, run through a team and like bang it in the top corner and things like that. To kind of go from that guy to all these years later, and not that many years later, he's still only 27, but he's become quite a sort of lumbering big man in his later years.
Yeah,
he doesn't seem to have much of a turn of pace. He's not particularly agile. So yeah, just a kind of lump sum big man, and got some vital goals.
Did he?
The Bristol one, I'm thinking particularly after the terrible run of form.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, he really looks like a guy that needs to have it fed directly to him to take those goals. It really needs to be on a plate.
Which didn't seem like the case when he was here previously, right?
No, definitely not. I mean, there was other times. I mean, he did try and make things happen outside the box. It just, as I say, it doesn't look like he's got that left in him anymore. He's a different guy. It's been hard. He's had terrible injuries. He's still plugging away. I don't think it's ever been for want of trying, but he's just looked like he struggled to make any impact on games.
Yeah.
So what are you thinking score-wise for Wigwam?
B-.
Yeah, fair enough. Fernando Forestieri.
Fernando Forestieri, who I was looking through this, I'm like, he scored twice?
And he did. There was a goal against Swansea and a goal against Birmingham, which are faintly coming back to me now. Oh, my word. Fernando Forestieri. I'm really interested to see. I would love to know where he's going to go. And I mean, obviously, it's never going to be the case, but I'd love to know how much money he would earn at wherever he ends up next.
I can guarantee you it will be multitudes lower than what he's been rinsing Sheffield Wednesday for. He's another guy that
he is. We can all agree that.
But no, like Wickham, whichever injury it was, or whether it's the culmination of injuries, the things that made him so vital and exciting have kind of fallen away. He's all anticipation and no delivery now. He doesn't seem to have that little burst of pace that he used to have that made him so dangerous when he got the ball in and around the box. He almost had that Eden Hazard thing of, I'm standing still, you're standing still, but I can be sprinting much quicker than you, and you're going to probably like lumber into me and give me a free kick, or I'll be past you. That seemed to have gone by the time he was sort of finished with us. Another one in a litany of players that, for all the love that was poured on him by the fans, for all the faith and, not to put too fine a point on it, money, leaving under a cloud, and I'm not sorry to see him go.
No, that's definitely the thing. My headache, I think, with talking about this is essentially how do you analyze,
quantify it, or
how do you quantify his season? The thing we can both say is I'm so happy to see him gone.
Yeah.
We talked about this before. We talked about how he's consistently doing that thing of
the giant problem with Fernando Forestieri is, I'm going to kiss the badge. I'm going to do all the PR. I'm going to go on all my social media campaign. I'm going to tell you how much I love it here and how much I love this club, and the fans mean the world to me. Oh, it's magic here. But then every time I set foot on the pitch, I either look like I don't want to be there.
He's also the guy that doesn't celebrate a goal to make a point, and doesn't go over to speak to, to congratulate another player to prove a point. I'll kiss my badge this goal and jump into the crowd, and then next week, because I'm in a huff, I won't even celebrate my goal. I won't even clap or look to anyone. Do you know, these are emotions and abilities that seem to be switched on and off like a tap. But actually now I don't think there's no go anymore. There's no tap. It's all sizzle and no steak. There's no he's not suddenly going to get good for anyone. He's done. Amazingly, some people still seem to think like he would end up at a Premier League club or something. He will absolutely not. I'd be amazed if he gets a Championship club. He'll go to League 2 in Italy, I think, or maybe go back to Argentina. I don't know how Argentinian he is, really, and how Italian he is. But his days as a top-level footballer are well and truly over, and quite distant now in the past. I'm quite, similar to you, I'm kind of amazed he's got 2 goals and an assist. So at some level he must have been vaguely okay for part of this season. I can't remember any of that. But
there's just a very languid feel to who he is these days, and it's a really interesting point you bring up. How much of it is just him being done as a player, as being a viable, star talismanic player for a club in this division. And yeah, that's a really good point. That I think we were just so hopeful. There's just been so many excuses about why he's not been present, and why he's done nothing, and it's just a continual process. I can't believe we're always in this position to just say, what is it now, Fernando? Oh well, no one gave me a bike or whatever it was, or I don't know. I was talking with Johnny, and the banter wasn't quite there this morning.
Johnny wasn't bringing it. Yeah.
I had a drink of my horchata this morning, and it wasn't quite good enough. I was really hoping that I could get paid. I keep thinking about that situation and the contract negotiations, and I wish I could have got another $2 or $3 grand more a week.
So,
I wish there was another preseason friendly where I could just racially abuse a team on another, a player on another team. That would be really good.
Give one of my teammates a kicking.
Yeah, I wish there was another player like Sam Winnall I could fall out with on the training ground. That would be great. It's so offensive. The thing is, it would probably mean a lot, right? I mean, if he was just done as a player in terms of injuries, but it's all the attitude and all the stuff behind that is so upsetting. He has taken this club for an absolute ride.
Yeah.
It's the long con, really.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
I'm so glad to see the back of him.
So a C?
But in terms of his performance, in terms of what he's put in, yeah, maybe a C minus.
Oh, goody.
Got a little bit of juice out of him, right?
Well, 2 goals makes him one of our top scorers. So yeah, must have.
I know, he's up there with.
He scored as many goals as Joe Wildsmith's thrown into his own net. And funnily enough, who's up next? It's Joe, top 40 Joe.
40 Joe.
In this case, just outside the top 20 in terms of minutes played, Joe.
And at number 21, there's Joe.
Oh, he has a whole lot of shit. That's the Led Zeppelin we're going at, weren't he? Oh, Joe Wildsmith. Let's go with
a C minus. Because
I thought you were just going to stop then, Luke. I thought you were just going to go let's go with, and then just nothing.
And then I just put my headphones and microphone to the desk, and I just walk out into the streets and just lie down in the middle of the road and wait for the inevitable car to run me over.
He was never seen again.
Do you think it's a C minus because he's not the worst keeper at the club? He's not the best, but he's the least.
I think he is the worst keeper at the club, though.
Really? But that's the problem, though. We've seen more of Dawson being terrible. This is the thing. It's all
when you take into consideration these last 2 games, I think Wildsmith's he's excelled himself in this particular race to the bottom. Because the Fulham game was a real tour de force of bad goalkeeping. And then the Assombalonga was so bad. So bad. It wasn't even a good shot. I don't even know how it got in. I don't know how he managed to put it in his own goal from there.
Well, it's just like it's just like the City goal he conceded, right?
I know, but I think it's the same thing. What was the one where he palmed it straight out to someone? He seems to save things in a crap, weird way.
Sorry, are you giving that analysis about Joe Wildsmith or any other of our keepers at the club?
But in particular, Wildsmith saves the ball out into the middle of the box.
Do you think it's interesting the fact that, we're obviously we're very pot committed with these players with large contracts? It's a little bit like their university professors in the States and they've got tenure, It's like, they're crap, and we can't get rid of them. They're here forever now, or they're in the...
They keep making passes at young co-eds.
They're like the Ruth Bader Ginsburg of goalkeeping. But yet they're young and supposedly spry. Who knows? Like, they're here forever. So, do you think it'd be funny? I'd love to know a thought experiment where we put Paul Jones in a net or Nicky Weaver. How bad do you think it'd be if Nicky Weaver put some gloves on? How old is he? Is he like 39, 40? I mean, he's
handsome, blonde Nicky Weaver.
He's looking younger since he's joined the coaching staff. I know. We're like, who's this? Get him a plaid lumberjack shirt, and we'll all be rubbing our trousers, won't we?
Exactly. 41 here.
Who is this dad bod dish that we've got on the coaching staff?
The real DILF.
No, yes, exactly, real DILF. So, what if you would disagree with C- then?
No, I think that's fine.
Okay.
I think it's hard. It's a very sad, depressing competition for who's our worst goalkeeper. But I really do think, I feel like in the final, the home straight, Joe has made it his own. I think he's claimed that prize.
But Rich and I will find out in the next season of reality TV show, S6's best throwers, brackets into the
net. Big Clodder. Dear it in the Big Clodder house. Joe's gone to sleep in the middle of the game. He's lobbed from 30 yards. Alessio da Cruz.
ADC, as is. We get some more clues from their initials and names, aren't we, in position?
Simple as 1, 2, 3.
And he is... Is he in between? Is that naturally says
ADC?
He's naturally in the DC range.
Yeah.
Or some days is an A, some days is a D, and some days is a C. Maybe that's it.
I think he looks... yeah, he looks like an A until you look closer, and then he's more of a D. But, actually you were judging him a bit harshly, and then in reality he's more like a C.
Alessio Magic Eye de Cruz.
Yes. When you cross your eyes,
we squint
and then
long enough,
reset them, then you kind of see that he's a very, very middling football player.
So I'm not very active on Twitter, but I wanted to. I think I poked. I feel like you're active on that, and thank you for doing lots of stuff with everything with the podcast, producing and putting out the social medias and all that stuff. We got a reply from one of our listeners, right? Was it Mark?
Yes.
About the fact that Arsenal...
He was linked to Arsenal, yeah. One of the most promising youngsters in European football. Just 2 or 3 years ago.
Mm.
You can see... He kept giving us the morsels of why he's highly thought of. Because he's a decent size. He's quite tall. I know Jordan Rhodes is 6'2", I think. And he's only a centimetre shorter than Jordan Rhodes, according to this. So I'm not going to do any extra research. But that means he's above 6 foot. He's quick. He's relatively well built. He's reasonably strong. And has some technique about him. The corners are good. A couple of his crosses were good. So you can see why there's the excitement there. But a bit like our old pal Nando, there's a lot of sizzle and very little that I'm left with at the end of only the barest scraps of steak at the end of the day, if any, to be honest. 1 assist is what he's been officially listed with, although that feels a little harsh. No goals. Do you think C? Just a straight up C maybe for him?
Yeah, that seems fine. Alessio de C.
Jordan, I was going to call him Jordan Alessio Rhodes then. Jordan Alessio Rhodes, the Greek international.
I really want to do the thing of being like, he scored 3 goals. Can I remember which 3 goals they were?
So yeah, in his 7 starts and nine off the bench, we've got 3 goals to show for it and a yellow card. What do you think of Jordan Rhodes, Luke, in this season's performance?
A C?
That might, yeah. I kind of feel like he's sort of done, when we've talked about Munkenstein's Monster and kind of
The roads fracking.
squads made out of gaffer tape or Jaffa cakes, he's sort of done what he's been asked to do. Sadly, that is a very kind of depressing little narrow furrow that he has for himself, but he's not done what we wanted him to do. And then that one game, we all believed in miracles and thought that anything was possible in this universe.
When you came along, you Rhodesy thing.
You Rhodesy thing. So,
I mean, he's obviously the most Scottish of our players as well. You know, he's up there with... I've heard that Bannon and Fletcher have said, we just can't understand Palmer and Rhodes when those two start talking.
They've got one of those accents, where they say "eh" at the end of every sentence, A wee bit broader. No, it's not like a Glasgow accent. It's just something else, and very down here in the nose.
Will you play some Monopoly Go?
Hey, Jacob, do you want to bring your vodka over here and play some Monopoly Go with me, eh? Remember how we used to play for Norwich and it was good, eh?
Oh, excellent.
So what did you say?
C, yeah.
Okay,
I think it's fair because I mean I don't know, but it's tantalising. That hat trick was tantalising.
It was
because it made you think. Oh, do you think we're going to get some more out of this?
And then no, absolutely not. No. Do
you think it's like going to?
So close.
Feels a little bit like you go to you go to your work cafeteria.
Carefully picking his words.
You go to your work cafeteria when they were a thing.
Oh yeah.
And then one day it's just exceptional. They just pull out all the stops and they put on like a 4-course meal that's just insane.
Yeah.
And then you go back again and it's like, oh no, that was just a fluke.
Moira stopped taking her tablets. We've put her back on the tablets.
She's recovered from the stroke.
Getting ideas above her station.
Yeah.
She was some highfalutin chef. We're like, no, you're a dinner lady. Start mashing the potatoes.
Get the Alpha Bites out of the freezer and put them in the deep fryer. For fuck's sake.
Put those turkey dinosaurs on that tray right now. Blooming hell, Moira. Cordon bleu.
We've got to call him Moira from now on, haven't we?
Jordan Moira Rowe.
And
then son of Moira takes us to Sam Winnall, partner in crime.
His one goal, and that was the first Monk game against Huddersfield.
Breakaway. Another man, a revelation.
You know, you can look back it's a real story for the grandchildren, isn't it? Like, well, we looked like we were clapping our eyes at this manager at Lincoln called Ian. No, sorry, I work with a guy called Ian Cowley, who hilariously is Canadian, but his parents are from Sheffield. No, it's Danny Cowley, wasn't it?
Yes.
And Nicky is his brother. So the Cowley brothers. We were batting our eyelashes at the Cowley brothers, and then we didn't get them, and we were all disappointed. And then we got Gary Monk, who felt like an appointment that we could have made earlier, and we probably should have made earlier in the season at the time. And then we came up against them, and it was an interesting ding-dong, and it was on Sky. And we made them look impeccably ordinary. And Sam Winnall, our disappointing striker, scored a quality header from a lovely clipped
had a perfect late, striker coming off the bench sort of performance, and we were thinking, I will take some more of this, please, Moira. This is delicious striking work you're doing. You come on towards the end of the game, you've got fresh legs, and you put them to good effect. Thank you. Thank you very much, Moira. And then nothing. Door closed. Chicken dippers.
So chicken dippers. Yeah, exactly.
Chicken dippers and spaghetti hoops.
So this is interesting. So this is actually this is just league goals. This is league appearances. These are league goals, I guess. So we've not looked at the FA Cup. So effectively, FA Cup doubles his goal tally.
Ooh, money.
To Connor Wickham standards.
Elevated to Wickham-esque heights.
Wickham-esque heights, yeah.
But what do we make? What do we make of this man? So he's six starts, 7 appearances in all. Almost all of those the other side of Christmas.
Well, it seemed like there was a moment where it felt like he was getting ahead of steam and he was working hard in training, and Monk was admiring him.
And of course, Thierry hadn't kicked him for a while.
Yeah, exactly. So it looked like he was kind of coming back in some type of fashion. It looked like he was making a late kind of Morgan Fox run of things in his Wednesday career, but it never really worked on the pitch. Mind you, some of his appearances weren't too bad. Him playing in the kind of, just off the main striker.
I don't ever really remember him having a bad game. I just don't. A lot of times I just didn't know what the point of him was.
It was all a bit unconvincing, wasn't it?
Yeah. But it kind of tried hard. That's about it. I thought there was going to be a list, and then couldn't think of anything else it did.
C-?
C-. Okay. I see your minus, and I agree with your C-. Joshua, Trumpy Bum, Windy Ass, Farty Pants, Josh Windass.
Josh
Windass.
9 appearances, 3 goals.
6 starts and
3 goals. And sometimes looking all the part of it. Sometimes not so much.
He could and should have had a Rhodes-esque hat-trick in the midst of those...
Exactly, the game against QPR.
Yeah.
I feel like a B- for Josh Windass.
Yeah, fair. I think I might be tempted to go more B, but I'm okay with the B-. I wouldn't mind him back, although it's surprising how little he's actually played, and most of that was because of injuries. So I don't know what his injury record is like normally, but that would give me a bit of pause over getting him back here. But we just don't have many people that get goals, and he seems to find it pretty easy. And I don't remember the last time we had anyone that wanted to work in behind and make spaces for themselves.
Yeah.
So he's bringing a fairly unique couple of skills to the table. I don't think he cost the earth. And as I sort of previously hinted at, I think he would like being at Wednesday. I think playing at Hillsborough, scoring at Hillsborough is the sort of thing that he'd probably get into. But I agree, for this spell, I'm happy to go with your score, which leads us on to the 3 youngsters. We've got Alex Hunt first up.
I think we can give Alex Hunt a B.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty respectful for a youngster who looks like he has a lot of potential to show. And I really hope he kicks on. I hope it's not... I really hate the whole thing with Wednesday where we give youngsters a try. They look quite good, but they kind of make a bit of a fault, or maybe they're not quite fully there.
Yeah.
And then a bit like Moira, they go back in the closet,
Yes. Because you have to, the deal with young players is, hopefully, especially if they're going to be a really good one, you've got a player that is better than where you are, or at least as good as where you are, at very little wages and cost, but they're going to have the occasional clanger because they're young and learning their trade. So, yeah, you've got to allow them the space to have the odd off day or the odd game where they don't quite pull up any trees. But I think the game against QPR was a real boost, and
his sub-appearance against Man City, which isn't covered here.
Sub-appearance against Man City was excellent, and I thought in that game against Huddersfield he looked okay as well. That was a very short appearance, but lots of reasons to be hopeful for Alex Hunt, and I don't think many downsides. I don't think he had bad games. I think he was sort of played out of position more than having a bad game. I think he looks good. I'm excited for him, and I think it'd be a nice place for him to end up at. Osaze Urugide.
Big O.
He's started 3 games and played enough minutes for 2.
Sure, and obviously since we're not keeping the cup appearances, which is interesting because effectively
one of his was a really good cup appearance, wasn't it?
Yeah, so effectively, I think this is the thing with Osaze. 4 games, 2 of which were excellent.
Too good, too bad.
Amazing FA Cup, amazing first team debut against Brighton, and then an incredible league debut against Leeds. Yeah. And then 2 games that were very bad. I think maybe we give him a B on reflection.
Yeah, fair enough. I hope it's all been legitimate. Well, not. I don't want him to be injured, but I hope he's been missing games, but through legitimate injury rather than what we've talked about, the fact that he's just been kind of buried or forgotten because he had 2 bad appearances. It does worry me we haven't seen him since then. It worries me for his sort of mental well-being, and it worries me for his sort of long-term future with us as a team, that he didn't manage to squeeze his way back in, even in some situations where it was almost like we were really twisting and turning our way to not get him on the pitch because we were making some bizarre choices elsewhere. Liam Shaw.
Seems like we can't. Maybe we'll just give him a generous B because it's literally just one game, isn't it?
Was there?
No.
And then the final one in terms of appearances, and I think it's you don't need to think too much about this. I think it's an A-star, Lucas João. He had a brilliant season. Just 12 minutes on the pitch, and he scored a goal in that time. Pretty much perfect season.
The disappointing thing is if we kept him playing for us, that goal ratio is amazing. We would have won the league. Why did we sell him twice over?
Yeah.
They would have won it, and they would have given us a double honours, effectively.
And 100% pass success rate as well. So, he would have made chances for other people. I think undoubtedly, player of the season, Lucas João.
Yes, let's leave it there. Player of the season. Rich, the only problem with this is, so here I am on the Wednesday website, and actually they've actually announced today, when we're recording this, no, actually yesterday, the 23rd, the Thursday, they can vote for your Wednesday Player of the Year. And I go to vote, and I can't select Lucas João.
That's disgraceful.
It's disgraceful. Also the hilarious thing with you need to look at the website article. So it's vote for your swsc.co.uk Player of the Year. There's a shot of, back in those heady times when we could all be in the same space and we all wouldn't give each other, life-threatening lurg. That's just going to rip the fabric of society apart.
Yes.
And they're celebrating with the crowd Wednesday. This must be at home. I think it's in front of, I believe this is in front of, I don't know if this is the car, but it might be the corner of the car. Anyway, there's a picture and a lovely cheesy grin is given by Moses Odebajo as he turns.
Beautiful.
Isn't that something?
Find you a woman that looks at you like Moses Odebajo looks at that camera.
Looks at that club photographer, Steve Ellis.
Also, poor old Bannon is really exposing the fact that his summer investment and his plugs, he's going to have to go back this holiday season to have a re-up.
His wee bald head.
his wee baldy patch.
So yeah.
Lovely stuff. Well, so we'll have to think of somebody else to vote for Player of the Season then. That's a shame. But I think we should just make sure that João gets a plaque from Different Gravy, not just another Sheffield Wednesday podcast. Anyway.
I would love that. Can we get it done, and can we get sent down to him at the Reading training ground, and him just with his, much like, I imagine like all football players have impeccable white pearly teeth, giving large, cheesy, beautiful grin, and him holding his plaque.
Yeah, we should definitely do that.
We could not forget those 12 minutes, Lucas.
If we had to pick another, would it go to? I feel it feels like the contenders are maybe sort of Fletcher, Murphy, Harrison, Iorfa, and Bannon. Maybe they're the top 5.
Yeah, and of those, probably I'm gonna plump for Fletcher.
Yeah, I agree. Well, there we go. I think, having spent the time going through the full squad, and I think it's hard to argue that we didn't do a thorough job at it. I think we should save Gary Monk's verdict for another day, another time. Maybe when he gets sacked. Who knows? It's a crazy world we live in. But we'll leave it there, and we'll say cheerio for this week, and look after yourself, folks.
Have a good one, everybody. See you later.
Cheerio. So, Luke, we're thinking the season's finished. The panel has made their decision. We've completed our season review, and we're thinking we might take a couple of weeks off the podcast to kind of refresh our batteries.
I think so. I think it's definitely been an interesting, long first season of Different Gravy, and a very, very interesting 19 but draining season for Sheffield Wednesday, the 1920 season.
19 but draining season is what they should start calling it, I think.
I think so too. So I think it's a good idea for us to kind of take a break and then kind of come back and then get ready for pre-season training and get riled up for another exciting 2020-21 season.
Yeah, and thank you so much for listening. Thank you for telling people about the podcast and all your positive feedback. It's really made it a worthwhile endeavour, especially during the period when we didn't have the football to discuss. So don't worry, we will be back. We'll be firing on all cylinders. Sinisters. We'll be firing on all of our cynicism. No, the cynicism will have just left the body. We're going to spend a meditative couple of weeks away from the pod, thinking of, in search for deeper meaning and life and truth and just contemplating the sheer coyness of Gary Monk. And when we come back, we're going to be positive, full of vim and vigor, and just ready to cheer Wednesday on to a tremendous new campaign. It's exciting times, really. Anyway.
Exactly. We'll be exactly like that and not defeated by the actions of some people who are termed to be professionals on a football pitch.
There'll be at least a week of being positive, and then that will inevitably start to creep in. But
exactly.
But those will be heady days in between times. Well, yes, as I say, thanks for listening, folks, and we'll be back soon.
Bye.